Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here as we get set for Friday's quarterfinal action in the Southeastern Conference Tournament. And Blake, we had high hopes for an entertaining Thursday of basketball, and boy, did it deliver.
Yeah, it was a good group of games, and certainly as expected. I think the first and last games were the two that we thought would be the best, and they were. And so yeah, we'll get to it later, but it's just there's a lot to say about the last game. I think the first game, which we'll transition to in a second, because A&M is going to play Auburn. But yeah, it was an interesting day of games. I'll get more into it as we go along. But
we had two teams that were just about out of it in the second half, and fought their way back into it. One won, one lost. The one that lost was Florida, which the Gators' season in terms of NCAA tournament purposes is done. Florida will be heading to the NIT, pending or presuming that Florida accepts a bid to the NIT. But A&M moves on to play Auburn in what was just a wildly entertaining game, and now sets up a pretty interesting matchup, although I think I'm hard-pressed to see the Aggies pulling an upset here.
Yeah, I think it's just the only thing, and we always say this about Texas A&M, is just the turnovers and their ability to turn teams over. You know, we talked about Auburn's guards at times can certainly have good games and bad games, but I mean, we look back at the previous matchup. I was looking at it last night, and Auburn only turned it over 11 times in that game. A&M couldn't hit anything from outside. I mean, Auburn couldn't either. They went combined. I think it was 6 of 47 from three for those two. So I just, as we talked about before, I thought Florida was a tougher matchup just from the matchup standpoint for Auburn than A&M. But I say that, and again, I don't think you can discount a team that just gets hot, right? And we always say it. It's just the team that just plays really well. And over this last stretch here, I mean, A&M's played really well. Not just yesterday, but really over the past several weeks that they played well. So I think I would expect this to be a pretty good game. I'd probably be surprised if Auburn's winning this by 15 plus or so. I think A&M's just the kind of team that can frustrate you. And I know Auburn won by 17 the first time, but I just think the pressure, it's going to be physical. But if Auburn's guards can take care of the ball, I think they win this game. Again, the Kessler, Smith, those kind of things, I just don't feel confident about A&M's ability to put themselves in a position to where they're going to be able to kind of hold both of those guys down, right? And that's what we always talk about. It's just because you have those two. And I think Jabari Smith, they played the first time, he only had 9 points, but remember, that's also the game that Kessler had 12 blocks. So I hesitate because I look at this game, and I do think A&M's, as I said, they're a team that's, look, if they win this game, like their season is essentially on the line here, and they will be motivated. I mean, that's Buzz Williams. Like, he's good at that. And so I think that is something to certainly keep in mind. They have a lot to play for here. But I think Auburn's the better team, of course, and I think they probably find a way to win.
Yeah, a few things here. A&M played Auburn in Auburn. As you mentioned, Auburn won. The score of that one, 75-58. That was all the way back on February the 12th, which was almost a month ago exactly. And that was the last loss of an 8-game losing streak. Since then, A&M has lost once. That was at Vanderbilt. Now, you don't see you don't see any of the top 4 teams in that win streak, but still, A&M playing better. To me, and I think you hit on it, it's just Wendell Green play under control, to put it a little differently than you did. Because I think if he does, it's hard to see Auburn losing this one.
Yeah, I don't even think it's just Green either. I think it's the entire guard group. I think it's just
Katie Johnson too.
They're going to need. Yeah, I mean, we've said it. We're not saying anything that people don't know. they need those guys to be not flawless, but everything runs through them, and you can't get Jabari Smith as involved sometimes if you have that kind of pressure. And look, I mean, I've said it. Buzz Williams is a very good defensive coach, and I think that he will scheme up something to try to make this work for the Aggies. But will it work? I think it's going to be a challenge, and that was a grind yesterday. That Florida game was a grind. So I just I think that's one where now you turn around, you're ready to go again, early tip off. Sometimes sometimes those things can be overblown, but I think it's a team like Auburn, maybe not so much because they are well rested, and I just think it'll be tough for A&M. But again, they win it, things get very interesting. So
Well, Auburn also a team playing for a 1 seed, and I think if Auburn loses this, I would give them less than 50-50 odds to get one. So things on the line for both teams. A&M, I still don't think they're in with the win, although they might be. I think A&M would have to follow it up with the win against either Arkansas or LSU if it were to pull this off today. So just
I think they got to win too.
yeah,
I think even if they beat Auburn, I don't know that it would be close, but I still think they'd be out of that.
I don't think that yesterday really moved the needle for them much. One problem was that Indiana won and Oklahoma won, and those are two teams that I had in front of them already. So
Yeah,
Oklahoma got a huge
There's
win.
No doubt.
Yeah. So yeah, I think A&M's got some work to do, even if it pulls an upset of Auburn. Okay, next one, LSU Arkansas. LSU had a fairly easy and convincing win over Missouri. This is the game that we circled in the quarterfinals before the tournament started, and now we get it.
It is probably could be maybe the best game of the tournament.
Might be. It could be.
It's yeah. I think this one will be excellent. There's no doubt. I mean, if you're looking at this entire slate of games, it's just it's the 4-5 game, right? And I think when you look at it that way, this should be the best game I think of the day. And LSU looks really good against Missouri, but as we said, I don't think that's surprising in terms of just knowing the matchup. I think that's kind of what we expected, right? Like we sort of expected LSU to dominate the way they did for a good portion of that game. But now, the challenge gets a little bit more interesting because Arkansas has beaten LSU twice, as we talked about this season. The most recent one was just was a really fun game, and I think that this is one where look, there's so many different variables that go into this game, like one like this, just based on the matchup. And LSU's defense, we saw it yesterday. Man, when they get after you, they get after you, and I think that is something certainly for Arkansas you're going to look at here. But the biggest question to me, and I think this is obvious, what I'm about to say is, Audie's Tony, and I think his status. I mean, do we know that as of right now? I know I checked yesterday. I don't. I guess I don't really know his status unless I missed something. But I think if he doesn't play, that takes away, as we've said, a very good defender, someone who plays a lot of minutes on a team that doesn't really have a lot of guys to play a lot of minutes. We've talked about that. I mean, Muss is kind of stuck with his guys of 5, 6, or 5 or 6 sometimes. Yeah, you'll get a couple of those guys come in and play some minutes, but so I think that's important to look at in this game. It will be a game where you're going to have those guys that, like they did in Tennessee, Likes and Johnson and those kind of guys may have to play a lot more minutes. And so I guess that's the thing I look at in this one is, does Tony play? Does he not? I'm sure there are people watching this saying, oh, well, he's either for sure going to play or for not. I haven't seen anything certain, and that's what we always say about these games. You don't know until they're out there. So, I'm still going to keep my pick initially that we had when we picked our entire bracket. I'm gonna keep Arkansas as the pick here. But like I said to you before, it wouldn't shock me if LSU's playing the championship, and we kind of laughed about that when we did our chaos bracket and stuff. But it's just I said on Twitter yesterday, LSU at full strength is more like a 2 or 3 seed, and they're going to probably be a 5 or 6 seed. So that I wouldn't want to be those teams that are surrounded by them because I just think the way they play defense, no one wants to play against that. And this should be a really good game. I am. I'm looking forward to this one. But I'll give Arkansas the slightest edge to pull out the win.
Yeah, I did a little bracket stuff this morning, and it's not complete. I think LSU may have moved into the 5 seed because you had some teams around them that took losses. Texas, Alabama, Ohio State's been eliminated with a not really good loss to Penn State. So LSU, I don't know if a loss drops them back down into 6 territory, but I think a win certainly would cement a 5.
Sounds about right. Yeah. And again, they're going to be a 5 at best probably, but full strength to me, they're a 2 or 3. I mean, I just think when they're on, they're really good.
Yeah.
And I think that's a team that, again, that's why this should be such a good game. I think it spreads at 2, Action 24/7. Arkansas favored by 2. It's going to be a good one. I mean, I would be surprised if it's not. You got JD Notae dueling it out with, that group, and Darius Days and Pinson and just Eason, of course. I think, again, this is Arkansas going for number 3 against LSU this year. Going to be a little motivated. LSU came out motivated yesterday. I think we saw that for sure. So there's going to be some motivation there, but the slightest of edge I give to the Must Bus.
The Must Bus. Hey, while we're at it, tell folks about our partnership with Action 24/7.
In the description below, Action 24/7. You can click on that link, use code SOUTH14 to sign up. First deposit, they will match up to $800. So if you want to bet on any of these games, Arkansas favored by 2, Auburn favored by 9. Those are the first 2 of these matchups.
Okay, we've got Mississippi State and Tennessee in a game State has to have any voice in the conversation of the NCAA tournament, and would still need more after that. Tennessee is going to be well rested, has been playing tremendous basketball. These two teams played in Starkville earlier. Tennessee won by 9. I think I see it playing out about the same way.
Yeah, the good Mississippi State showed up yesterday. That's the one thing that I think you look at here. They played pretty well. I'm not saying they played flawlessly, but South Carolina didn't do themselves any favors. But I think the matchup, right? That's what we talk about, matchups. I think Mississippi State's a team that matches up well with Tennessee. But it's still one of those things where Tennessee has just been the much better team, over the past month or so, without question. And I don't know, though. It's like, does Mississippi State just getting that confidence from beating the 7th seed by 22 points yesterday? We've talked about how bad they've been away from home. Well, you kind of, I know it's South Carolina and they didn't play well, but you kind of throw that out the window now, I think, because you did play so well yesterday. And so I think that's something that gives Mississippi State a little bit of confidence heading into this one. I think we talked about this game in the big bracket we did, where we just made all of our picks. But that first game they played a month ago, it was one where I think it's going to go back to kind of the same situation. I think it's going to be similar in terms of Tennessee, really good defensive team. We know this. They're another team that forces turnovers. We keep talking about it. There's so many teams in the SEC, that just accumulate steals, and Tennessee's another one of those teams that does that. And so I think for Mississippi State, that's a big part of this, because they have had some trouble at times taking care of the ball, and that's even with Iverson Molinar on the floor, right? They've still had some issues. So I think Tolu Smith is a big X factor in this game to me, because, as we've said, I mean, Tennessee, I'm not to the point anymore where it's like, okay, they lost Com one. Again, he's a good player, but I think they've at least figured out the rotation and what they need to do. Now without him, there's been enough time to kind of think, understand what you have to do in the front court, even when he's, sidelined. So I'm still going to lean Tennessee here. I'm not going to change my pick on this one either. I think that they're still one that, it sets up pretty nicely, I think, for Tennessee. But man, I tell you, Mississippi State, they looked pretty good yesterday. Not saying they were perfect, but they did look good. And I think this is one where, when they play to their potential, they probably can make this thing interesting. But if Tennessee's guards keep playing like they played over the past little while, I just think that's probably going to be the difference because, you go back to that first meeting too between these two. I feel like the guards just hit some big shots in that game, to kind of help fuel them. And look, Josiah Jordan James had another, that was one of his games too, where he played really well. And those four guys, guard wise, James, Vescovi, Chandler, Ziegler, they were pretty much it for Tennessee from an offensive standpoint in that game. So I, yeah, I'm leaning towards Tennessee here, and I think they're a 7-point favorite in this one. Sounds about right to me. I think that it's one of those games that, like you said, probably feels like it's going to play out like the last one did. Um, but I do think there's a chance. I don't think it's as straightforward just based on how Mississippi State played yesterday. And we always say the team that gets that momentum in their first game, going into a team that's been sitting and sitting and sitting, that can be a factor. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out.
One thing I will say is a point for Mississippi State, although Tennessee's got plenty of depth too. This is a team that's played a lot of guys over the season. Played, what was it yesterday? 8 guys got double-digit minutes. Cam Matthews got 7. But, I mean, you've seen, like, Anderson Garcia has become a bigger part of what they do. They do have some guys who can play. They played some walk-ons yesterday, although not enough to really matter. But this is a team, because if you're talking about a team that can come out of nowhere and make a run in the tournament, you're probably going to have a little bit of a bench, and State does have that.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, and we know in this kind of tournament that's important. So yeah, we'll see. But I mean, it's again, I don't think Mississippi State matches up badly with Tennessee. I just think you're going off of what you've seen from both teams, and I still think to this point certainly we look at what Tennessee's done and how well the guard group has been playing, and I think there is an Iverson Molinar on the other side, but I just think that sort of the versatility you get with Tennessee's guard group is something that could win out in this one. So,
quick word from a new sponsor. Wager on sports and win NFTs without risking any money. It sounds too good to be true, right? No, it's not. Stakes, and that's STAKES, is the wagering app that's casual, social, and made for all sports fans, whether it's by yourself or friends. Experience the thrill of sports betting without needing to worry about losing your hard-earned money. Sign up, use the code Southeastern14 to join the thousands of other sports fans playing with Stakes. We've been putting some polls on there about SEC games. You can bet tokens, as many as you like, in terms of what you have. I think there are some limits, but in any case, really cool way to just do little sports prop bets and bet on games and things like that. And again, you lose no money, costs you no money. You can bet on NBA, other conference tournaments, all kinds of stuff. But I've played around with it, really fun. Hope you guys will check that out too. Okay, we've got Vandy and Kentucky playing in the nightcap. Vanderbilt came down from, 14 last night in the second half to beat Alabama. Scottie Pippen Jr. took 21 free throws. These two teams played twice. Kentucky won the first one, I think by 12, but was up almost 30 late in the game. Vanderbilt went to Rupp and made it a game in the rematch. This is one, Blake, where I think Vanderbilt could be in the game and even up at halftime, but I think the second half is where you worry in this one.
Yeah, I mean, we always say that third game can be one where you sometimes just run out of gas. And again, we were talking about that yesterday. I think we said, I mean, Vanderbilt, we thought it would be interesting against Alabama. I mean, I picked Alabama to win, but we kept saying, like, I think this is one where it was best case scenario for Vanderbilt because they did not play hardly anyone very many minutes against Georgia. Everyone well rested still after that game. So it basically, felt like you were going into game 1.5, not game 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was very valuable for them, to be able to still have the ability to come back and play the way they did in the second half against Alabama. So credit to them. For getting to this point. We said, I mean, look, I think we said this from the beginning. If there's a team you're looking at that has been right there in a lot of games, it's Vanderbilt. And they're playing as well as they have all season. Maybe not in the final 50 seconds of a game like they did in a couple of those, but overall, they're playing a lot better and they're at full strength now. So we haven't seen that very much this season. So shocked that they beat Alabama? No, because, on the flip side, and we'll quickly talk about Alabama. I said it last night in the Twitter space we did. Anyone who is expecting anything different at this point from Alabama is just simply hoping, wishful thinking. Like it's that this team is what it is. There is no other alternative. Like this is not last year's team, and I still don't know if that's gotten through to some fans, but it's frustrating, I'm sure, because this was a team that came into the year. A lot of people thought this could be, one or two in the SEC, maybe three, but they last night was another example of. Look, I mean, I was laughing. There was 79 free throws in that game. That's got to be an SEC record for this season. But it's just it was something. I don't even know how else to say it.
That was a physical game. I thought there were going to be fights at some points.
It was physical, but I still don't think it was physical to the point where there needed to be 54 fouls and 79 free throws. But that's just me. I mean, once again, I just think you look at it and Alabama's just not. You cannot trust them, and that was the case last night. But I don't want to take anything away from Vanderbilt because again, I think Vanderbilt won the game. I don't think Alabama lost the game. I think Vanderbilt came back, made the plays, won the game, hit some big shots. Miles Studi hit some big shots. Chapman made some big plays. Of course, Scottie Pippen there goes without saying at this point. So, I mean. It's just one of those things now where I think we'll talk more about Alabama when we get into the seeding, but I assume we're pretty much settled on Alabama as a 6th seed, right?
I think so. I was doing a little bracket math this morning. The thing is, the teams around them are a little bit wonky. Texas, which is kind of right in front of them, lost to, who was it yesterday?
TCU.
TCU, yes, thank you. So I still think I've still got, as I see these 1 to whatever, I've still got Texas a spot ahead of Alabama. I started to try to move Alabama down. The team I had right behind them was Iowa, which is still playing, I think, in the Big Ten tournament. Just though Iowa 2-6 against Quad 1, 3 Quad 3 losses, which was as many as Alabama. Now, the predictive computers like Iowa more, but I don't know. Yeah, I think that the committee is going to look more at resumes. Ohio State, I've got below Alabama already. Ohio State took on a bad loss to Penn State. Colorado State's a team that could jump Alabama, but I still think, you got to watch out for USC, Seton Hall, Michigan State, some teams below them. I think Seton Hall's still alive, right? Or do they lose to Creighton?
You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah.
I think so, but
well, point is, I've still got Alabama as a 6. But you got some teams still alive that are a little below them. Okay, so forget Seton Hall then. Sorry. Yeah, Michigan State might be one to watch. Kind of similar resume as Alabama's in a lot of ways. So right now I've still got Alabama a 6. But
yeah,
7's as low as it's going to go, and that's in a disastrous situation probably. So.
Well, listen, we said. I thought Alabama's toughest game of the SEC tournament was going to be the first one because they were going to play a team that, seeding-wise, was not to their level, right? And turned out to be the case. But again, not taking anything away from Vanderbilt. And now with the Kentucky game, I don't know how else to say it. Like, I think Kentucky's gonna win the game. I'm gonna keep that as my pick. But I keep saying, man, anytime that you have a superstar on the other team and you've got Scottie Pippen proving, I mean, like it or not, like he does it time and time again. And
like he can go cold for 15 minutes or not, and then give you, 15 points in 10 minutes and win a game.
Yeah, I mean, he gets to the free throw line, and I know that was something else, not just Alabama fans that frustrated by that, because he shot probably a combined 90 free throws in the 2 games they played this season, but I wasn't that many, but there were a few. But I think that's just part of that's part of his game, and we've seen that to this point to where he just I think his ability, just to maneuver his body sometimes and put himself in the position to where, guess what? Even if he doesn't get fouled, he can sure make it look like he gets fouled, and that's something that's just as important sometimes. So, yeah, I think that's it in this game. And like I said, I mean, this is. Let me look back at that game they played at Rupp because I want to see here. So they played that. Was that the first game they had pretty much everyone, because that was Robin's first game back, right? Chapman played.
Sounds about right.
I want to say that was the first time, at least an SEC player, where they had. Well, that would have been probably the whole season, where they had the entire group just in there. Yet, Robbins didn't play much because, again, that's his first game back. I think he had 4 fouls or something in 12 minutes, whatever it was. But now he's got his legs under him, right? Like he's back, kind of in his.
What are they with
form.
those with Robbins and Pippen back?
I already said
it's a lot more wins than losses.
They're an NCAA tournament team if all those guys are playing this season.
Yeah,
I
think you're right.
I don't have a doubt about that. Yeah, I mean that. Again, we can play the what if game many years in a row now for Vanderbilt, but I think this team is. I think they're a 9 seed. Something. I mean 8, 9, maybe
10,
somewhere in there. 8, 9, 10, whatever. I mean, I think they're. I don't want to say safely in the field, but I think they're probably in. But even in this game at Rupp, right? Pippen had 33. I mean, and Wright had 14, and then really no one else did a whole lot from a scoring standpoint. But they were right there with a chance. So, John Calipari, he is going to have his, he's going to try to come up with whatever he can in this one, or maybe it's just, hey, we know we can't stop this guy. Let's just make sure we stop everybody else. And we'll see. I think it's going to be an interesting game, but like you said, it does feel like one where Vandy comes out with just a burst of confidence based off of what they did last night. Great game for maybe 20, 30 minutes. And then I feel like that's one where, as we always say with Kentucky, they're another team that can just make that run in a split second. Sheboy dunk, steal, Grady 3. Another steal, Grady 3, 8 points win. I mean, that's just.
Who was it? Was it Alabama they did that to, where they were. Literally, my feed went out for a couple minutes. They were down 10. It came back on a couple minutes later, and they were ahead. I mean, Kentucky can do that. I don't know that Vanderbilt can.
Yeah, they can do it.
Well,
that quick.
Pippen can on his own, maybe, but
right.
Hey, let's say something about Vandy, because since we started doing this podcast here, there just hasn't been a lot to say other than when we talk baseball. In football last year, they hit a level that even for Vanderbilt was horrible, and probably going to be there for at least another year. And I still have my doubts about Jerry Stackhouse. I got plenty of reasons for that, but he's got this team playing well. He's got them playing hard. They're almost never out of a game. I mean, you can go back and count. The Kentucky game, I think, was the only game they just got blown out of in league play.
Florida one's the only other one. Yeah.
Yeah. The Florida game where they.
Yeah. They just couldn't
score on me and you, but
yeah.
I mean, the fan base has finally got something to cheer about, and I think the SEC is a better basketball league. I'm not going to call Vanderbilt relevant yet because, I mean, this is a short spurt. They're the 11 seed, so let's not get the cart ahead of the horse. But it's good to see their fans have something to cheer about a little bit again.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said it. I know the saying. It's not that long ago, Vanderbilt was a team that one of the better basketball jobs in the conference, and one of the teams that was usually just right there, like in the middle half of many years, right? Like the middle half or above. Like they're just. I just think people forget that sometimes, and I think people sometimes just say, "Well, it's just Vandy, right? It's Vandy." I get it. Football wise, I understand, but basketball, man, they've had a lot of success.
That gym used to be like, I'm not gonna say nothing you've ever seen because there's some great environments in the league, but like you take Auburn, Arkansas, anybody this year, and when that program is rolling, Memorial Gym is on par, I think, with any of them. Now, whether they ever get that back, I don't know, but
yeah, that's the question.
And I think Blake, they've got a good shot at the NIT now. You've got to finish over 500. They've clinched that.
I think they're in the NIT, yeah.
Well, I mean, it depends on bid steals from some of these lower conferences, because the teams that get out, like Towson's one that I think won their conference, didn't win the tournament. There's been a few like that already, so you've got to keep an eye on that. I think the league, I'm going to guess the league's going to get, 5 in the NIT? Vandy, A&M State, South Carolina, Florida.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, again, I think that could be an interesting game with that group. So, still going to pick Kentucky, but I think Vanderbilt, going to give them credit, playing well, and they will not lack confidence going into this one. So,
parting thoughts?
Nope. Again, we know the scheduling is just kind of, it is what it is this week. We get our videos out, games start right after. It's just, that's the best we can do. But we are going to do the live stream on Sunday, Selection Sunday. Tentatively going to try to do that maybe as soon as the bracket's revealed. What if we try to do that? Like as soon as the whole thing, it'll take 30 minutes to reveal the whole bracket, and then we hop on after that and do a live stream, maybe.
Yeah, we're debating that, or we're debating doing the bracket reaction. In other words, you get to see us react as teams are overseeded or underseeded, or get a bad draw, or
plan
whatever.
Your schedules for us to be on a live stream in the 5 to 6 o'clock hour on Sunday. That's Central Time. If you're in Pacific Time, that's going to be a 3 Pacific live stream in that area. So, but yes, somewhere in there. So
we do have some listeners on the Pacific Coast. We found out.
Yes, we do.
And Texas.
Good.
More than we knew, Texas.
We want people everywhere. So, yeah, we appreciate everyone.
We do. ELE.
Twitter Spaces as well. We've been doing those. Follow us on Twitter. Last night's got a little crazy, but that's Twitter for you. So.
All right. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button. We'll see you again soon.